This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
This ought to be a great class. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Are you blissed? I am. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com, broadcasting right here from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Studio A. Tom's producing the broadcast in Minnesota. Converging threats are confronted daily by your instructors. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Welcome, Rick.
Morning. Well, it's like, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but...
All right. Okay. So how are we gonna arrange that?
Well, I have been doing some study, and what I'm discovering is really alarming, and I have to share it just as a fiduciary kind of responsibility. Nobody's saying this. Okay, in information theory, there's a set of mathematics, information theory, and there's a very famous algorithm that states that if you have enough information to ask a coherent question, you have enough information to answer it. With that said, that means the information is contained in the way you structure the question. And so there is a series of algebras that have been used to predict the future. And they're very accurate. What this one is called, it's like an infobot, something that Cliff High would discuss, that was developed by Ben Goertzel. He's a math friend of mine that's pretty solid in his mathematical approaches to things. And his primary emphasis is in On's and Clifford algebras. And he has developed an infobot that takes the chatter on the internet and groups it into different kinds of structuring that accurately then predicts the future. And here it goes. What this system of mathematics is predicting is that, number one, Fukushima was an extinction event, that nothing on Earth lives after the year 2050. Now, there's more to this, and it goes on, and I'll give you the predictions. What happens is everything on Earth dies by the year 2050 because of Fukushima. The amount of radiation that is leaking into the ocean now, all over the internet, they are saying today not to eat anything from the Pacific Ocean. And that's just the beginning of it. As we've talked about in past conversations, there are ways you can try to minimize some of the already effects. I was watching this video from the health ranger, Mike Adams, and he took a chicken McNugget and then went into it with a microscope to see what was actually inside the chicken McNugget. It grossed me out. There's fibers in it that look like morgellons, and nobody knows what the morgellons is. The dolphin kill-off on the East Coast, the FEMA inactions that are going on. I think there's something large going on. Here in the state of Oregon, the National Guard's everywhere here, and with their Humvees and all the rest of it. And I had a friend visiting in, and we went up into the mountains, and we're driving around. We're going up to a little 6 mile up on the Illinois, and they stopped us on the road and would not let us go back on in. And this is after the forest fires are all out and gone. So something else is going on here. And when I started reading about Fukushima, and by the year 2050, the infobots also include that by the year 2100, pretty much all of the stratosphere particulates of plutonium and the rest of it that there will be cleaned up. Who cleans it up? Well, now that's the other part of the infobot that says there is rioting going on Mars right now. Yes, it's colonized. Yes, it's moving forward. And the big revolt that's going on had to do with Curiosity's nuclear power plant and the outrage of the people on Mars to even allow that kind of technology on their planet. It's interesting who is to assume it. I'm enough of a scientist to realize that predictions of using information theory is actually a very valid approach to things, and the chatter that you would find on the internet is such that it's hard to disseminate what's real and what's fake. That's what an infobot does, and then tries by credible sources and other kinds of algorithms, comes up with a prediction. It's pretty serious, and I don't think anybody is talking about it now. And here we are talking about going into Syria. We don't have the money to do that, and it's just crazy what's going on. I don't want us to invade Syria. How many people in the American public do not want to see that happen, and yet watch what does happen and how that affects your pocketbook? Something else is going on here, and I don't really get the big picture yet, but I felt a responsibility of at least saying something.
Rick, the statistics that I've read are 9% of Americans are interested in and favor invading, destroying, bombing Syria. Now, from what I can tell, we have no proof of weapons of mass destruction, and we have no idea where the nerve gas came from. And rogue elements are not capable of making these kinds of weapons. So when I look at this, Rick, and this is just my opinion, I think we were involved. I think we were involved in making this mess so that we could go in there and
happens to someone irresponsible, let them pull the trigger, and then blame it on Rio. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, and not only that, Rick. Now, why would we do this? Well, you know, it keeps the munitions companies in business.
And other things related.
Yeah, and in addition,
how this all relates to Fukushima, I don't understand. You know, when you wanted to know my top 3 problems, you know, Fukushima was number 1, chemtrails is number 2, and GMOs are number 3. And now I've got a 4th one, which is epigenetics. And it's unbelievable what's going on. You know, at the last conference, I did a small workshop on how to defend yourselves based around my newest book on power tools. And I have to tell you, those protocols in there will help, but I don't have any defense against plutonium. Even your blue-green algae off of, freshwater ponds, like chlorella, spirulina, and what they call Klamath blue-green, Aphanon, sun plus aqua. Those all will help bioremediate toxins, heavy metals, and radioactive material out of your body, but nothing will do plutonium. When you get, and who designed that, General Electric, who designed these to have open pit spent plutonium fuel rods on fault lines with no backup or actual absolute how you get rid of it. It was like the greed was to take all the money and leave the problems to our grandchildren. And people need to say something now. I mean, on an individual basis.
Rick,
coming to that level.
Rick, one of our one of our team at USA Prepares heard me on the radio talking about General Electric and looking at the coast of Japan. Someone would be out there.
Look at this morning, it's terrible. You know, there are maps that actually show the amount of radiation going into the sea on a moment-to-moment basis, and it's unbelievable. They've just, this last week, shut off all their filtration because it's not working. That means there's no defense against it right now. They're not even trying.
Yeah, right. Well, Rick, what happened was one of our students who listens to us on the radio at USA Prepares heard me talking about, well, imagine being in a boat a mile off the coast of Japan and saying, hey, let's litter the coastline of Japan with nuclear reactors. And he heard me say that, and then I mentioned that they were designed and built by General Electric, and so he sent me their phone number. Rick, I gave out this phone number, and I'll give it out in just a minute. And this is the corporate headquarters for General Electric. I gave out this number, and I called it during the break that day, a couple weeks ago. Let's see, it was on the 15th that I did this, and of this month. And I got through to Jeff Immelt's office, and he's the CEO of General Electric, and he was in a meeting, so he couldn't talk to me. But I did this while I was on the break, right here on Genesis, kind of like if I called during the next break, okay? Well, I've given out that number a couple more times on the air, and I said it's his number. Do you know that number now goes to voicemail? They don't even answer that line anymore?
Yeah, that's the way it's going to go, and there's going to be no accountability. It's all about greed and leaving it to our children to worry.
Right. So here's that number.
On fault lines, that's crazy. Chattanooga, where I was visiting, I fell in love with that city, and yet I will have nothing to do with that region because of TVA. The Tennessee Valley Authority has got these nuclear reactors all hidden, can't see them, but they're there, and they're on fault lines. It's crazy what they're doing. And 17 of these different reactors on the Madrid fault line are similar in design to Fukushima, where they have open pit, garbage dumps where they put the plutonium to, what are they going to do with it? Well, at some point in the distant future, quote, they'll have technology that can go in and handle it.
Dumb idea. Rick will be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, class. If you'd like to call General Electric and ask them what they plan on doing about the nuclear waste or the nuclear reactors that they've littered the planet with, Jeffrey Immelt is the CEO, IMMELT. Jeffrey Immelt, 203-373-2211, 203-373-2211. Repeat, 203-373-2211. Rick, at the top of the next hour, we're expecting a call from one of our instructors, Lynette Pate. She's known as the organic guru. She's been to the expos. She's asked me to be involved with some of her events that she has. She is anti-GMO in a big way. And she's going to be describing a very, very emotional event. Her father, on the 20th of this month, was executed by two 20-year-olds. In Arkansas. He was shot in the head with a .44 Magnum. His body was thrown in a ditch and left there for days, 3 days. And his car was stolen, driven to a park, and burned. And then the police decided they were going to seize evidence from the deceased's residence. We're going to learn about that. So that's coming up at the top of the hour. Rick, I'd like you to be with me for all
Yeah,
of this.
I met her. She was a nice person. Very sorry to hear about what happened.
Yeah, it's
Just
very,
a couple
very
of days
sad.
ago. Just less than a week and a half ago. Wow.
Yep. So she's going to call in, and that's the plan. I talked to her a couple minutes before we started broadcasting, and so it's going to be a somber part of this class. But she's going to help share what happens by the police. She's going to talk about criminals who are let out of jail. She's going to tell some things that most people would not even want to discuss. So that's Lynette Pate, Lynnette, Pate, P-A-T-E. She's one of us, one of your instructors. Rick, we're talking about plutonium. We're talking about the three events that you're most concerned with. And what happened, class, is probably months ago, I asked Rick, what are the top three things he's concerned about concerning mankind? What events or what things are happening that we need to worry most about? What are the top three? And Rick responded with Fukushima, chemtrails, GMOs, and he just added to that list epigenetics. And Rick, epigenetics is, the way I think about it, Rick, it's kind of like what Darwin was talking about with evolution. The environment, the foods, the surroundings that we have are changing our genetics real time.
Yes, that's correct. Epigenetics is the suggestion that there is a supercode on the DNA beyond just the hologram of who you were, who you are, and who you will be. For example, a given gene in the sequencing can determine whether it came from your mother or your father. If it came from your mother, these kinds of behaviors will occur. If it came from your father, other kinds of behaviors will come. And what epigenetics is are these codes in the DNA that turn on and off timetables on certain kinds of things like telomerase and how the fraying of your proteins begin to cause aging, that kind of thing. And what is happening is that there are sequences in there that, when altered, will bring on or stop arthritis, for example. It's a code in the DNA that tells when it's to begin and when it's to stop. And what Monsanto and others are doing now are altering genes, not so much to affect you, but your great-great-granddaughter. There is a master plan to make a different race of human beings, it would appear, that are responding to a certain kind of worldview where you are essentially a lesser form of consumer.
We're talking about epigenetics, and Rick, you mentioned the lesser form of consumer. And of course, that brings to mind the violence in our cities, the flash mobs, the thefts that these 20 to 40 member gangs or congregations do when they enter a store. All of a sudden, 20 to 40 of them, and then they just steal whatever they want. They take whatever they want, and they feed their instant greed. And we're seeing this, Rick. This is something that hasn't happened before. We didn't have young people just saying, okay, ready, set, go. Let's invade this store, steal whatever we want. We knew right from wrong. So we are changing, Rick. We can see it. It's right in front of us.
Yeah, there's a need for educational reform. There's a need for the home, family reform. That's basically where it all begins, is in the home, around the family nucleus, and the lack of it. That's just one part of it. The other, of course, is that there are too many people in the world, and that what you have now is a kind of congregating of aberrants. And I wouldn't want to be in the middle of East L.A. if a grid went down. Gee, I mean, that would be nightmarish. What would you do? Hide so that you weren't part of the craziness that's going on out there. And, I've seen how group consciousness takes over a mob. I've seen that happen. I was in the race riots back in Philadelphia when I was doing graduate work back in 1966, 67. I was there in the middle of it, and I saw it for myself. Individuals that wouldn't dream of a certain kind of behavior, and yet when they get into a mob, become part of a kind of consciousness that takes over. It's an embarrassment, and makes me sometimes ashamed of our, the human race in terms of what we're becoming.
Rick, when you're talking about those race riots, the National Guard was brought into a number of cities on the East Coast and the West Coast, and I was talking to a man who owned a fuel oil delivery company. And he said, I was talking to him back in the 1980s, and he said what they had to do was these were city properties. They call them row homes or row houses or townhouses with these flat roofs and brick buildings in the East Coast. And what they were doing is they had their hunting rifles. They were on the flat rooftops, on their own rooftops, and they were waiting for the invasion to come around the corner. And there was going to be guerrilla warfare with people defending and protecting their homes from these mobs. And Rick, we don't just see it in gangs of young people. We see this mob mentality with SWAT teams. I've got on the website some posts where these SWAT teams come in and they bash down the door and 7, 8, 9 guys beat somebody up for no reason. I mean, tase them. Hey, tase them again. That's
the adrenaline. That's the mentat, and of course, the diet is all part of what makes you who you are. You are what you eat. And I'm just telling you now, I personally would avoid anything with wheat in it. I would personally avoid anything that has been processed, because almost everything that's processed has wheat of some form in it. Why? It does it. Well, that's because they're modifying specific coding sequences in the epigenetic form to turn on and turn off signals in your body using stimulus. And the media should be ashamed of itself in terms of its fiduciary responsibilities in reporting accurately. Whatever happened to Watergate and the idea of going out and pulling up some dirt and exposing individuals and situations for what they are? I have a couple of lead scouts that I've met through, your program. There's one guy in Australia that listens to you that is a mathematical genius, and he has sent me stuff that is appalling. Others, like Joey and Grace Thorne, these people are all becoming aware now and are starting to see things more clearly, and that is what I would hope every single reader, listener in your radio coverage takes on personal responsibility for some of this stuff. It's not going to stop otherwise. It's not going to happen. It's going to have to start with your own personal commitments of participation or not. You're not going to get away with it anymore by hiding or ignoring it. It's not going to work like that. And Fukushima is in everybody's face, and nobody is addressing it yet.
Rick, at the Expo, we did something that had never been done before, and that was we had the Nemenhah, the chief of the Nemenhah cloud piler, consecrate the ground as sacred. And I contacted all media, newspapers, radio, television, even the KY3 television station that we spent a fortune advertising the Get Prepared Expo on in our local market. We told them that this had never been done before. This was something that really should be covered. and that was consecrating the ground as sacred, which puts it off limits to all government employees. So we had a city property that we rented, and the government employees were put on notice that they had to apply for permission to attend our event. That meant no NSA, no FBI, no CIA, no police, no government inspection, detection, rejection. None of those minions were allowed to be at our expo without applying for permission, or they could be held individually responsible for their own actions. And we all know very well that government employees don't want to be held individually accountable for anything they do. They hide behind the government.
Well,
and,
they did that with the Nazis, too. You know, they were ordered to do it. You know, good luck with that.
Well, Rick, here's what happened. KY3 did not show up, and so I fired him. I told him, we're done doing business with KY3, because if they won't cover breaking national news like consecrating the ground of a convention as sacred, putting the government's state, local, federal, city on notice that they were not welcome without applying for permission, if they didn't consider that national news, I didn't want anything to do with them. That's KY3, Springfield, Missouri.
Usually you have to approach the owner, because the owner of that media is probably got agendas.
Well, that's what I found out. That's what I found out. And so I've resisted. This is really the first time that I mentioned exactly who they were and what they did not do.
Yeah, name him. Name his name. And watch what he does next. You know, it's time for everybody to become accountable as a human being. It's time that, if he didn't want to cover your thing for whatever reasons, that's one thing. But the agenda part of having intent, that's the part that is going to kill mankind, is the group mentat of intentionality. If you are pure with love and grace, watch what happens in terms of the way people treat you. And I had someone, just because of my smile the other night, someone came up and started singing to me because she liked my smile. That is a place that we want to be. That kind of place. Noticing it too.
Rick, you're right. Rick, I got an email from Mike Parsons. Mike is one of us, and he's Nemenhah. He's a Native American, and he's also a medicine man, a Nemenhah medicine man. He's Cherokee, and he lives in Tennessee. He's run for office, and he sent me an email, and he said he'd like to have me ask you a couple of these questions. He said
sure.
that he knows someone who heard a loud boom in the sky over their home, and when they went outside, they saw something that looked like a trail of blue mist in the sky. And then a few days later, they spoke to another neighbor about it, and the neighbor said that he did not look to see anything in the sky when it happened, but he found 4 of his cows dead and another 7 stunned, and we're only beginning to walk 3 days after that event. Do you have any idea what it could have been? Could it have been a meteor, space junk returning to Earth, DARPA playing with their toys?
Does the trail anything like that? I have no idea. What did the local media make of it? I'm certain it got reported, right?
I don't know. I don't have.
That's the first place you start. What did the local media say? If there was a cover-up, there is no local media on it, what does that suggest? I don't know what a blue thing is. I can tell you that the chem and chaff trails that are going on are toxic. I think it's getting in our food system. The health ranger, Mike Adams, was doing this analysis on the chicken McNuggets. I will no longer eat anything that has been processed, including chicken. I won't do it. You take a microscope and look at it, and that's why I won't eat it. You can actually see what appear to be fiber. They're not hair. They're not metal. What is? It looks like metal. The little tiny fibers that look intentionally put put in to that processed foods. A little, very strange. There's a Health Ranger has a little video on his analysis. Just do Health Ranger and Chicken McNuggets, and it'll come up. And it's scary to realize that our foods, this is what is called food sciences. And it's scary where that's going now. I mean, really scary with dyes and artificial coloring and nutrient additives that are not foods. They're, I don't know what they are. It's crazy. And I'm a scientist.
Rick, there's a post on the website.
Anymore. I won't do it. I'm now starting to go into realizing that probably the safest food out there comes from my own backyard, and who knows what fell from the sky onto it. You know, with all the aluminum that's now getting into our food chain, they're finding it in our bodies.
An emergency.
And it's from the chemtrails. And why are they doing it?
Professor, we're talking about a loud boom in the sky. Mike Parsons had asked that question, and we've got Mike Parsons on the line with us right now. Mike, did you want to add something to what we were talking about?
Well, I just wanted to let Dr. Richard Allen Miller know that, no, the media was not anywhere around. They were not contacted, and specifically they were not contacted because these people did not want people sneaking onto their property, hunting for meteors or whatever it might be. And this was a discussion I had with the person who witnessed this. And the interesting thing was this blue vapor trail, this blue mist that appeared to be a trail that was left from whatever hit. I assume something hit, but for something to have killed these cows and stunned these others. Now, I've not been shown the location. I've not been given anything other than what I gave you as far as information, so I don't have any other information. I just thought Dr. Miller might have, in his travels and experiences, heard of something about it. The blue mist was kind of an odd phenomenon, so I didn't know if that meant anything to him.
Yeah, the fact that it had color to it is alarming, because even meteors are usually in white light because they're disseminating and blowing up. The blue would indicate there was particulate matter that was filtering the light, and that's, who knows what that is.
Yeah, I don't know if it could have been possibly some type of a rail gun or some type of a laser weapon that would have vaporized biological or, stuff in the air.
Yeah, but the blue trail would suggest that there was a remaining particulate that then fell, and that blue is significant. I don't know what it would be. There's not very many things that would leave that strong a color that you could see in the atmosphere like that. So it's probably toxic.
Well, the only thing I know is that the guy took out a backhoe and buried the cows where they fell. There was no necropsy done by the state medical examiner. They didn't want anybody out there, so they just took care of business. And I'm just kind of fortunate I was privy to be shared that little bit of information, but I thought if I could ask someone who might have the access to find out what it might have been.
I can look into it. That's one of the things I can do. We do have I have a dialogue search and other military things that I have access to. I can see what I can find out. Which state is this in, Tennessee?
Yes, it's in West Tennessee, just north of Memphis.
Okay, I'll check into it. I'll see what I can come up with.
Happened about 2.5 weeks ago.
2.5 weeks. Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay.
Mike, a quick question. Have you experienced abnormal cattle deaths last year?
Cattle theft?
No, death. Animals dying last year? Abnormal amount?
I don't have any cattle, but I did have some losses that were of otherwise healthy animals that was kind of random. It wasn't a large group. It was just an individual thing. And the state medical examiner knows me all too well, because I don't have a problem with taking an animal in to be dissected to determine cause of death, because I want to know. I want to know if this is something where somebody has thrown something over to this animal, because we're out in the middle of nowhere, and if an animal just arbitrarily dies, that's that's not normal.
Yeah, we had an abnormal number of cows die last year, and that's why I asked, because we had chemtrails and we had some animals die, way too many, and that's why I was asking if you saw that too.
Normal amount of chemtrails. Just in the brief time I was there visiting with you, I have never seen anything like what I saw there in Missouri.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had, one of them. I think Rick precipitated a tornado. Seriously, at the last expo.
We were there to witness the grapefruit-like hail that came down that your son had concern with. They actually pulled over and got in the center of the cab because they were afraid of windshield being broken. It was that bad. That's what he said. And you and I mean, you had to put your thing into four-wheel drive to get through the ice.
Yep, and and it was warm. It was 70 degrees. Dr. Richard Allen Miller and I are going to be back. I believe Lynette Pate is calling in. Hang on, it's going to be an emotional second hour. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com. Mike Parsons, thanks so much for being with us.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Okay. Everyone all set? Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and Lynette Pate is joining us. Welcome, Lynette.
Hi, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Lynette, this is going to be difficult, I know. I talked to you yesterday, and the day before I learned this very sad news. Class, Lynette Pate is a USAPrepares.com instructor. She's been to our meetups. She's been to our expos. She's invited me to speak at her events in Missouri. And so we have a close-knit USAPrepares.com family. And I learned the very sad news that her father was murdered on the 20th of this month. And Lynette, it's a story that is chilling. It's a story that you wanted to share. And so please tell us what you'd like to share with us.
Thanks, Vince. Like I said, if I don't get this message out, then it will never stop. It will never stop. My dad was a true constitutionalist, freedom fighter, everything that you and me stand for, Vince, only above and beyond. My dad was one of those types that I shared with you. He actually, in 1985, I'm sorry, he walked into a court that was already proceeding and demanded a judge to be arrested, and he made a citizen's arrest because my dad didn't care what he did. He didn't care who laughed at him. He just did it because it was right. He successfully had it done, but then it went sour after that, of course. So that's the type of dad my dad was. And because of I blame the system, Vincent. I blame the system, our corrupt government, our corrupt justice system, for my dad's fate. Had he not been in a place where he could meet this God, my dad never did anything that was, to you and I, Vincent, considered a crime. My dad stood above and beyond the law. Or, as you know, our law condones certain things as being a crime. My dad committed no crimes ever. The only so-called crimes he committed was stupid stuff, such as, okay, you know what, I'm going to be a sovereign citizen. Okay, I don't believe in a driver's license. I'm going to do this, this, and this. However, with that being said, in his older ages, he was not very old. He was 66. But in his later days, over the past year and a half, he started getting a little bit more scared because the cops became more ferocious. So he said, you know what? I can't fight it like I used to. I'm just going to do what I need to do, get my license, do my insurance, do everything. And he did that successfully for the last couple of years. But everybody in Arkansas knew my dad. All the cops have known my dad. They know what he has. They know what he's capable of. So any chance that they can put my dad in jail, they would put my dad in jail. Even though he was older, and it was clearly to see once they pulled him over that his brain wasn't ticking as fast, and he did truly forget to pay his insurance. He was driving without insurance in Jonesboro, and he was arrested. For 3 days, he sat in jail. 3 days for non-payment of insurance, really? You could clearly look on the records and see that he was paid up for, he only let it lapse a little over 30 days. I don't know exactly. I've got to get all the records. But nonetheless, it doesn't matter. Honestly, was there a victim involved? Honestly, did he deserve jail time? No, but that's what our corrupt system does. And to boot, he's not only in jail for non-payment, but he's in jail with convicted felons. The same people who rape, who abuse, who are pedophiles, who commit violent crimes. My dad was in that same place. The known thug, he met one of them in jail. The other one was already out of jail, but he was a friend of this other one. And so my dad doesn't meet a stranger, and he makes no enemies. The only enemies my dad had were the cops. My dad had tons of friends. Everybody loved him. He befriended this thug because, again, my dad's keen of knowing people weren't just as keen as they used to be. In fact, they slacked a lot in the last 6 months, and I tried to tell him to be careful. But nonetheless, he actually offered this wonderful thug a place to live when he got out. My dad felt sorry for him. He didn't know what he was in jail for. My dad wasn't expecting to be sitting in the same cells and having the same lunch with felons. And my dad is in there just for traffic violations. And that's what this guy was. So my dad befriended him. And my dad was out of jail first, and then the other guy got out. And the other guy wanted to take my dad up on his offer to come live with him. So my dad, being my dad, got somebody to give him a ride because he still didn't have insurance yet. He had to wait till the next week. So he had someone, his cousin, as a matter of fact, to go pick this kid up 50 miles away from his own apartment and go pick this kid up to give him a place to live. And there is where he met the second person, and it just went sour from there, and they manipulated and tortured my dad. So I blame our justice system.
Lynette, you said they tortured your dad, these two 20-year-old types?
I can't prove that right now, but knowing my dad and the way the crime scene was, of course, I wasn't about to look at my dad's pictures, but I did go to the crime scenes, and based on the two felons and knowing my dad, my dad's a very good talker, to try to persuade somebody from doing something bad. They already openly admitted that they beat him up. And, I mean, what more torture can you get? That he was 66. These kids were 20 and 21. And then pushed them to the ground. Shot him with his own gun. His gun was not where it should have been. I don't know that. I wasn't there, but no. It wasn't, because my dad was in too much of a trusting mode at that point. Execution style. And then drug him across the road. And dumped him.
Lynette, I'm I'm speechless. And I have a feeling that Dr. Richard Allen Miller, who's on with us, is also. The loss is beyond belief that your dad would help a person that he met in jail to give him a hand up, to let him move in, give him a place to live. And from what I read of the reports, Lynette, it looked like these two thugs, these two criminals, wanted to steal from your father, steal his properties. Is that right?
That's what we are told. Of course, thugs will change their story 100 times, but so far that's what they've said, that they wanted to steal his belongings. But also the story twist, because my dad was still keen, he still didn't show them or tell them where he had anything or hid anything. So that, both of the guys' story, they are pretty solid, because they both say that my dad dropped them off at a place because he didn't want them to see where he went to pick up his weapons, because one of the guys allegedly was going to buy a couple of my dad's guns. That's the story. But knowing my dad and what they say is that my dad dropped them off. They had no idea of what he had, how many, what, why, or where. But according to them...
It's a crime to sell a weapon to a felon. So your dad would have known that these guys were felons. They were in jail.
Right. And my dad, and that's what baffles me, because my dad's weapons are not hot. They are very legitimate. Every cop in Arkansas, but most of them in the Northeast Arkansas knew exactly everything that he had. So that for the story twist, it's like he wouldn't, because he was very careful. Now, it is true that my dad was wanting to sell a few guns, but I told him not to, sell them to me, I'll come get them, blah, blah, blah. But also my dad is very smart on who to sell them to. He didn't just sell them off the street. That was the bizarre thing. He knew some trusted people. There was a certain shop that bought guns, legitimately all legal. And then he had sold a couple to, people, and he wouldn't even let me know, because he just doesn't openly say. He's very particular. He's very, very picky about where his guns are to go. So I just don't believe that he was going to sell these kids. I just don't believe that. I just don't. No matter if my dad had poor judgment on befriending and having him to live with them, that I can believe, because my dad would pick anyone up off the street and help them out. That's
I have a
the way
question.
He was.
I have a question. Do they have death penalty in the district or region where your father was murdered?
Yes, they do.
And have these kids been charged with murder?
One of them has. Now, I have not talked to the police in 2 days because they haven't returned.
Tell you
my
what, guys, hold that thought. Lynette, hold that thought. Rick, hold that thought. We're going to a break. We'll be right back. Rick, bring your question up on the other side. Lynette Pate's with us. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Class, murder in the first degree means that the murder was planned. Murder in the second degree means that there was a homicide which took place at the same time as another felony. And murder in the third degree refers to a death that happened when the innovative intent was simply to harm the victim. And then manslaughter is the crime of killing a person without hatred. And this is a situation that amounted to a murder happening without it being planned. So
I'm going in a different direction here. The reason I'm asking this is that this question of death penalty is that I would recommend, like a medical doctor, getting a second opinion. I would hire a detective, a good one, and get to the bottom of the possibility of collusion, conspiracy, and or something else going on.
Okay. Well, can that happen? My dad's already
say the motive and the thing was this, you have no idea that maybe this was a planned event for a lesser sentence on one of the two might have been charged with. And who knows what's really going on there. And the fact that your father had interface with the local police in such a manner that he would go to jail for insurance lapse, that's not a jail sentence. And here, they just give you a ticket. And usually you can, if you were to renew it before you go to court, usually the judge just dismisses it. Now, the whole thing doesn't smell right. And the reason I'm mentioning this is your father isn't going to just arbitrarily sell pistols to some young kids that may or not have money. And all of it doesn't feel right. And so my recommendation is that you get a detective and let him sort it out so you have at least a second opinion when you go to court. Who knows what's really going on here?
Exactly. Well, after September 19th, which is their first initial arraignment that I will be there, yes, my husband and I have already decided we're hiring private investigators. Anyway, we've let all the authorities know.
Yeah, okay, well, you don't, that's the second thing. My father said if you're going to do something, you never threaten. You never threaten. You never give them warning. If you're going to go do something, do it, and then let them discover it or not. The problem is, you're giving, there you go. Now, so I would pull back those reins and just do your own intent.
Okay.
Find out what really happened.
Gotcha. Well, let me tell you this. I'm sorry, Vincent, yes?
Lynette, I was on the phone with John Moore. John Moore is a USAPrepares.com instructor. He's also a private detective. He's a researcher, and he's a broadcaster. And he offered to chat with you and give you guidance, and he's willing to help you. So I will email you his phone number so you can call John Moore.
Yeah, what you need is a database here going and several people involved, and I wouldn't tell anybody you're doing this. I would just do it.
I definitely won't.
Warning. If you're going to go do something, you never give them warning. And the other part, my father always said, and this is very important to hear this, is that you never seek to have to fight. That if you're forced to fight and you're lucky enough to get them on the ground, you always put your boot to their face and scar them so they remember it. That's my father's lesson. And if the police are involved, who knows where it all goes down and where it might lead. Good luck to you.
Well, that's the thing, Richard. Here's what happened. 15 years ago, my brother was murdered in the same area.
Interesting. How is that? How does it relate to this in your mind?
Well, I'll tell you. Now, granted, his wife murdered him. But his wife murdered him in cold blood. I mean, there was no scuffle, nothing whatsoever. My brother was the same as my dad, yada, yada. But his wife was having an affair with a cop. So guess what happened? She didn't even serve the first couple of years. My dad and I fought because she was supposed to be 20 years without the possibility of parole. Long story short, she kept getting in and out. Then finally, 5 years later, when my dad and I found a warden in Little Rock that had just now become a warden, we gave him all the paperwork and everything was as it should be. So he arrested her again and had her sentenced to start over. Well, everybody else didn't like that, so they fought to get her in and out. She totally served a period of maybe 7 years.
We're talking with Lynette Pate. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. A very complex situation she's describing. The murder of her father by two young men. And there's no way that this story can be told in a short time. So we're going to have to come back again, when we have more details, more facts in front of us, and we can lay this out in chronological order. Lynette, you had another thought?
No, I was just, yes, it definitely is a two-parter.
Yeah, let me ask one other final question. Do you sense a relationship between the one murder and the other?
Not as the normal public would see it, and I'll tell you why, because my brother killed the wife.
Your gut, your intuition.
Gut. Yes, because this is what they did 15 years ago. They brought in the federal what is it? The federal, what is that? Alcohol and tobacco and firearms. Okay, so they brought alcohol, firearms, and tobacco, but they brought them in on this murder that they knew who it was and they knew what gun was used, his wife. They brought them in to seize all of their guns and all of my dad's guns, too, because my brother and my dad were known to have mass amounts of weapons. So they brought them in. So that's why it's related.
What's
2
a
weeks
mass
just
amount
before
of
my dad
weapons
was
for
murdered.
you? What does that mean? Like 20?
Well, I don't, like 30 or more. Well, between them both, it was more than that. I don't want to list any and reload. I don't want to list too much information because, they were good preparedness people. Unfortunately, they missed their fate.
Be sure to present all of this information to your detective.
Yes. Well, also 2 weeks ago, our wonderful governor, well, not my governor, but the wonderful governor in Arkansas, just 2 weeks ago, expunged my brother's murderer. If you look her up, she has no crime that ever existed.
Something else is going on here politically.
Well, and when they seized my dad's gun, they did a lot of things illegally already, and I don't want to say too much because I have to state that for a lawsuit.
Yeah, you don't give them, you don't talk about this much further. What you do is action.
Right.
Lynette, I think the best thing that can happen for you at this point, if you're going to proceed, is to not release any more information.
Right.
Because it may impact your case. So let's do this.
Do you have a good media contact yet?
Well, I had two. I had one in Little Rock and one in Jonesboro, but you know what? They didn't get the information out that I wanted. I didn't even want it focused on my dad. I wanted it focused on America's justice system, and of course they did not do that.
I wasn't referring to that part of it. I was referring more to, in fact, you may need some different kinds of arsenals besides legal.
Okay. No,
and that
I don't
you
have
may
any.
need a reporter to champion or help you get to the media rather than the legal systems. It may be, like our area, some serious internal corruption going on that would allow this kind of a cover-up. And if you're going to go up against something like that, you are going to need other resources.
Okay, I need to, I need to get help finding those resources then.
Okay, good. Okay, you got what I was trying to say. You bet.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, and thank
Lynette,
you. I got to do another program. So,
Lynette, I'm going to send you the contact information for John Moore. It's on our website, page 1, usaprepares.com. John Moore's a private investigator, and he's certainly willing to talk with you. So, Lynette, I want to thank you. Our prayers are with you. It's been really, really tough. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate you listening to the story, Vince, and thank you, Richard, for your input. You all have an awesome day. Okay.
Thanks, Lynette. Rick, that was tough.
Interesting, typical, and I don't believe anything. And if you've got a good enough imagination, what you do is all possibilities, just like playing a game of chess.
Mm-hmm. And class, I'd like to share this with you. Lynette and I did not discuss very much of what you heard. We all heard it, a lot of what she said for the very first time. And when she gets more information, we can have her back, and she can tell us more. Rick, I've got some questions that came to us earlier in the broadcast. One of them is about Fukushima, and the questions that I'm getting, emails and people calling me, even instructors and meetup people are asking me, okay, if Fukushima is depositing radiation all over the planet, airborne radiation, what do we do? Do we move south of the equator? Do we build an underground, I'm not going to call it a bunker, but here in Missouri...
No, listen. But plutonium, if that gets into the atmosphere, that is a planetary killer. There is nothing going underground. The only thing you can do is leave orbit. And that's why probably they're rioting on Mars. Oh, yes, Mars has been colonized for some period, and there are people, Earth people, that are there. I don't know if there were indigenous that were already previously there, possibly why when we left Mars because we ruined it and we came to Earth. I don't know how that all works. What I do know is that there is, according to some of my friends that are remote viewers, a rioting going on Mars right now because of what's happening on Earth. They do not want anything to do with nuclear energy, and that is like a ban on in this planetary system of things. And why we are allowing it to continue here is crazy. It's the aircraft that come into LAX from Asia right now have to be specifically removed and cleaned because of the particulate matter they collect as a magnet going through the stratosphere in Asia. The product, the radiation, the particulate matter is already up in the atmosphere. It is already everywhere. There are pictures from last year on when Fukushima dropped, strontium-90 particles or whatever, and it mutated various plants. Oh, yes, it's here, all right. Whether or not it's to toxic levels, I don't know. What I do know is that everybody in Japan is probably dead. The amount of thyroid cancer that we're seeing coming out of Tokyo right now, 40% of the children have thyroid cancer in less than 3 years. How does that work? Now,
Rick.
It's way worse than anybody has been told.
Rick, one of our instructors' wives is a medical doctor, a surgeon in the Springfield community, and I've mentioned this a couple times so far, that she said that there's chromosomal damage in newborns here in Springfield, Springfield, Missouri.
Just go ahead and do newborns, chromosome damage, Fukushima. Watch what comes up next. Just do your own study. And why the media isn't talking about it at all.
Rick, do you think it's because the media today really are not trained in science? They don't have a good general education?
No. The media is so large. There's all kinds of people. You and me are involved. Everybody's in the media. You're a media person. You're trying to report it. I'm talking about mainstream, the high end, where your best reporters go. Why are they not reporting it? It isn't because they're not knowledgeable. Trust me. It's something else is going on. It's, who wants to hear about doom and gloom? That's why I'm changing my website. I'm going to try to be more empowering. Okay, that's blue-green algae. Eat blue-green algae. That'll take some of it out of your diet. But, really, chlorella, spirulina, Klamath blue-green, whatever. All of the algae are good for you. They will remove some of the heavy metals. But your food choices and your water choices now need to become a higher priority. I wouldn't eat anything from the Pacific Coast.
Rick,
and I'm talking about shoreline, too.
I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Whatever.
I'm so glad you mentioned not eating anything out of the Pacific, because
again, we've got all the debris here in Oregon right now. They have a huge cleanup thing that they're doing. And they're not talking about reactor nuclear energy or the radioactivity. What they are talking about is that the plastic is now habitat. This floating junk is habitat for special viruses and bacteria that are now mutating also because of what's in the plastics. Tires, like you talked about last week, all of it needs to be rethought immediately. And even, I don't know, I probably won't be here by the year 2050, but the chatter says that's when everything is ended. That means it's going to start now, and you're going to start seeing precursors to that event horizon shortly.
Rick, do you have an idea what those precursors are? Because what I'm seeing here in Missouri is that people have shorter fuses. They're more angry. They're more hostile. Now, I don't want our class to think that, you know, everyone I meet is, you know, like looking for a fight. That's not it. But they have shorter fuses. I'm noticing that people in stores are really not paying attention to their customers. They don't really care about their customers. We're doing the minimum amount of whatever it is we do. We're doing the minimum amount to get by. I'm noticing, and I mentioned this at the meetup, Rick, and I'd like your input on this. I mentioned that it seems to me that people are tired, they're worn out, they're exhausted, they don't want to start, they don't want to continue, they don't want to finish, they've lost their initiative, they've lost their innovation, they just can't get their act together.
Would you like to be a child in today's environment? You know, starting out, looking for a life and career and education, and you know, it's everybody is under stress. Stress is what kills people, and it is our mismanagement of the stress. Actually, in fact, I would suggest that everybody begin thinking about how to change the movie.
Rick, let's talk when we come back about some of the precursors that we should be paying attention to our demise. Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Class, if you'd like to get in touch with Dr. Richard Allen Miller, you can go to his website, oak-publishing.com. Oak, O-A-K, dash, or hyphen, publishing.com. And his books and materials are available for purchase right there, oak-publishing.com. And also there's a link on the website, usaprepares.com, page 1, on the bottom of the page where the instructors are. Rick, we have a text, and the text says, what does Dr. Miller think about lithium orotate as a supplement for stress?
Well, I wouldn't take it. They tried to give me lithium when I was a kid, and, you know, my mother wouldn't have it. And really, what it does, lithium will alter your personality. If you're depressed, man has a responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain. If they're toxic, eliminate them. Push them out of your mind. That is why you want to train your mind, not medicate it. In my opinion, training is way superior to medication. And medication is a pharmaceutical response for controlling the masses. And lithium is a metal, just like aluminum and barium. You do not want to be taking those kinds of medications if at all possible. I know I have friends that are clinically depressed, and all they can do is have to take these medications, and they're not healthy. They will shorten your life. They will inhibit the quality of it. And if depression is part of your mentat, well, everybody has a burden to carry. Get over it. I don't mean to be callous like that. How could I, with my awareness, not be depressed? And I'm not. I have taken personal responsibility for my own internal landscape. And if I don't like something, I try to change things. Remember when I said everything happens for a reason, and everything leads to something better? Continually, you know, I'm looking at my clouds here today, and none of it's real. This is scary. I just wonder what's in them.
What you mean by none of it's real is it's not natural, it's man-made, correct?
That's correct, yes. And I'm wondering what's in it and what's going to fall on my garden.
Rick, as I've been reflecting on this broadcast,
I wouldn't recommend lithium, is what I'm suggesting.
Right.
Rick, but I'm, also, and have had my own personal relationship to those kinds of things, and I'm so grateful that I didn't go that way.
Rick, I want to thank you for your friendship. This morning I walked. Seriously, Rick, I walked by the room where you stay, your room here at the farmhouse, and it's kind of quiet without you here. And
sorry about that. Thank you,
really,
by the way,
Rick,
for the Berkey and the check.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I'm glad you're filtering your water. It's not good out there.
Yeah, it's with arsenic and everything. We have arsenic in our water out here, and so this Berkey will take care of that.
Yeah. Rick, the precursors. What do we look at? We've got just a really short amount of time. What do we pay attention to?
Your energy level is a good place to start. If you start noticing that you don't have energy, that is a very good place to start looking at thyroid. You get some blood work up. Take a look at what's going on inside your body, your PSAs, that kind of thing. If a lot of it is associated with diet, of course, but it's your body talks to you. Everybody can hear what you. I mean, you know more about what's going on than your doctor does, really.
Yeah. So, Rick, the reason I asked is, and we're out of time, but the reason I asked is at the meetup, so many people, the majority said, hey, we're tired, we're worn out, we're shot, we've got no enthusiasm, no energy, can't start, can't maintain, can't finish, no initiative. I was shocked. I thought, geez, I can't believe it. It's everywhere.
End on a positive note by saying chocolate cures everything.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller, if you'd like to contact him, oak-publishing.com. Above all, honesty and integrity, what happens next?